Hello, hello. Here's Argy again, coming to you from Broadcast Team Alpha with the Paranormal World Show. And we're coming to you on 44 different platforms around the world. And one of them is the Conscious Awakening Network. And you got to go to visit those guys because they got close to 50 different shows over there. And it's really interesting stuff. So go see them at consciousawakeningnetwork.org. And if you are watching us on YouTube right now, then that's the place to be because that's the only place where we can monitor the chat room. And otherwise, I want to talk to you a little bit about quantum mechanics. How quantum mechanics can explain absolutely everything that is observed and that we experience in our reality and outside of our reality as well, in higher dimensions, in other places in the universe, and even the spiritual arena. And it's going to get a little deep on this one, but deep and technical. But I hope that you can stay with me for this because it could be an interesting conversation with your brother-in-law that don't know anything about these things. If you can explain to him what he is and maybe why the universe works the way it does, that could be an interesting conversation for you sometime. But you know, quantum mechanics has been around over 100 years, but hardly anybody knows anything about it. And of course, we know that Albert Einstein, he was trying to figure it out somehow, but he never really could figure it out. There were others that was way ahead of him. But the golden boy, Albert Einstein, he said that if you cannot explain quantum mechanics so it is understood by a 10-year-old, you don't understand it well enough. So let me try to explain it so a 10-year-old can understand it. Now, that does not mean that I am an expert on quantum mechanics. Far from it. When it comes to the equations, I lose myself. I can understand just a little bit, but the concepts represented by these equations, those I can understand. And this is best explained by examples and also by definitions and repeatable, repeatable scientific experiments that prove the concepts that they're talking about. And there's many of those. And one cornerstone of quantum mechanics is the Copenhagen interpretation. And it leaves an opening for the explanation of absolutely everything in our universe. So I'm going to read a couple of things from that to you because once you refer back to this and think about what I'm going to read here for the next 3 minutes, then you can understand what I'm going to talk about later. You can see how that will work. And here, as it says, the Copenhagen interpretation is a fundamental concept in quantum mechanics, formulated primarily by Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg in the 1920s. So it's been around for 100 years, and still nobody knows much about it. It is an interpretation of the mechanical in the mathematical information of quantum mechanics, aiming to explain the nature of reality at the atomic and subatomic level. Now, there are some core principles, and one of them is the wave function collapse. Now, the Copenhagen interpretation suggests that the quantum system exists as a superposition of states of existence. That's a maximum, no, that's a mixture of all possible states of existence until something is observed and measured, observed and or measured, either in your presence or at a distance. It doesn't make any difference. Upon the measurement or observation of it, the wave function collapses to one definite state of existence. So, with other words, this could explain why some scientists now are saying that the whole of our universe, other galaxies and planets and black holes, does not even exist until we put a telescope in it and we look at it. Then the field collapses and it takes form in the physical. This is what is shown on the blackboard using the equations of quantum mechanics. So then we have the observer effect. The act of observation itself causes a wave function to collapse. As we said, this implies that the observer plays a fundamental role in determining the outcome of a measurement or observation. So, if that's the case, nothing exists until we observe it or see it, feel it, think about it. There's nothing there except the wave with all of the possibilities in it. Once we think of something in that wave, that part of it collapses and becomes physical so we can interact with it. Boy, this gets deep. But when we think, it means that when we think of something, we create it. When we observe something, we create it. Because you heard the saying that thoughts are things, right? Okay, yeah, they're things. We don't think of it that way, but they are electrical impulses traveling down all these neural networks in your brain. That's one part of thoughts. Those are physical. And then we have the mental quantum interaction of it. When we think of it with emotion and vivid images and so on, we create it in our mind, not just the brain, but in the mind, and we place it into the quantum field. And what you create is placed in that quantum field. It is sitting there. Quantum mechanics speaks of that part of it as the theory of inflation. And it sits there until you think about it again. And the more you think about it, the more you visualize it, the more attached you become to it, the more and easier it would be to bring it from the field so it collapses into your physicality and you can enjoy it now. That is what we do in the mastermind that Nori and I put together 3 years ago. We create out of seemingly nothing. You should come and check it out sometime. You can see some amazing things. And the creating part, when it comes to instant creation, which is very possible, that is done in the deep theta state of awareness, of brainwave pattern. Most people have heard about alpha thinking. That is when you lower your brainwave pattern into the alpha range of brainwave pattern between 7 and 14 cycles per second. Now, that brings out abilities that is latent in the mind, like perfect memory, and you can start doing other things. Far sight, there is there is some things in there that is not talked about much, but you have abilities that you don't know you have. So those come to the surface when you can use them. Once you start getting into the alpha range of awareness, and the real creation happen in deep theta. That's below 7. So you can start study on that one. Watch some of my videos. I talk about these things. And also, there is a good way to explain that kind of creation, which is created out of seemingly nothing. And I know some of you have heard me talk about this before, but it's good to hear it again, because then it enforces that this is real. It can be done. And that is the one about the elephant. I'm a hypnotist. If I put you in this soft chair and talk to you for 10 minutes, and I tell you that when I snap my finger and bring you back out, you'll see the elephant sitting right over there next to your chair. If I did my job right, I snap my finger, you see the elephant. You can reach on and touch the snout on him. You feel the rough skin. You can hear him breathing. You can smell him. There's an elephant there. And I don't care if you're on the 40th floor of a skyscraper and there's no chance of the elephant ever getting there. You will see the elephant. But there is a problem. I can't see the elephant because there is no elephant there. But you can see him because he is perfectly real to you. These kinds of things can be done with hypnosis. Once you can break down the barriers, and once you lower the brainwave pattern into deep theta. You kind of need to get down to deep theta to get that kind of result. And then the question becomes, you got an elephant in the room, but I can't see it, but he's real to you. So did your real world go away? Yeah, it did. You created that elephant in your mind because he's real to you. You can feel the rough skin. Okay, you created that elephant. I just gave you the idea that you could. Now, we do something similar when we No, there is another galaxy out there called Andromeda. We don't look at it all the time, hardly ever, unless we have a telescope or we see a picture of it. So that, according to quantum mechanics, that galaxy is not even there if nobody is looking at it or observing it or thinking about it. Because it's in wave form. It has not collapsed the wave yet into physical form. Once you put a telescope on it, bingo, the waveform collapses and it becomes physical. And that is all explained in quantum mechanics. And also, our reality is expressed in holographic form. And how do we know that? Well, there is this physicist, his name is James Gates. James Gates. He says he's been spending most of his life studying the universe and how it works and why it exists and things like that. And he says, when we look deep in the equations explaining the fundamental particles of the fabric of space, like proton, neutrons, omegons, and way down into the smaller particles, we find computer language. We didn't put it there. It just shows up in order to be explained, to explain what we see. So if there is computer language in the fabric of space, there's got to be a computer somewhere. Where's the computer? I don't really care, but I'm really concerned about who's sitting at the computer. I think that's you. Because looking back on the principles of quantum mechanics now, we create the reality around us by observing and interacting with it. So now we look deep in the equations of the fabric of space. We're looking at something, we're interacting with it, and it has to be able to show up in our reality in a form that can be understood, which comes as computer language. So we create our reality, and the computer language shows it as holographic in nature. And that gets a little deep. And then we have parallel worlds and timelines and all kinds of things like that. So those are detailed expressions of the fabric of space that we can interact with. And the theory of the universal wave function, or also called the many world interpretation, I think it is. The many world interpretation. That was put forward by, Hugh Everett, back in the 1950s, 55, 57, something like that. And the Copenhagen interpretations say that the many different timelines where we are probably all in those different timelines. You can be here, you can be in another timeline, and you can be maybe in a myriad of them, hundreds or thousands, we don't know. And these, according to quantum mechanics, these timelines are parallel to each other. They do not mix or join together. Of course, that kind of conflicts a little bit with what we see in different, there are electronic apparatuses that is able to see into the future, and they see timelines merging. So I don't know about this one. I think they probably are, because of the simulation we are in, is going to end. And I think they need timelines to come together to be able to end it all. But that's for someone with further up the pay scale than me. I'm just going to go with the merging of timelines because the experiment will end. So now the physical reality is an interpretation and splits into different timelines on, well, it splits when you make major decisions. An example of that is where, let's say, you go to college and you have no idea what major you're going to take. Then you say astrophysics sounds like a really interesting subject, so you start studying astrophysics. Now, by doing that, you're starting to learn things that you will be applying in the future, and you start thinking about the future, and you create the future. So you create a timeline from the present going into the future. But 6 months into it, you lose interest. Now you want to become a doctor. So you flip and you go in a different direction, becoming a doctor. That creates a new timeline. And quantum mechanics now is saying that the old timeline does not have to collapse in order for you to create a new one. You keep them both. And you can also exist in both of them. So the more decisions you make, the more timeline you get about. I don't think that minor things, I think, is probably not necessarily creating a new timeline for you. If you lose your spoon on the floor during breakfast, I don't think you get a new timeline from that. That's just kind of goofy. But the many world concept leaves open for many, many, many different timelines. So it's right on the blackboard. They can see the different timelines. I remember about 20 years ago, I think it was Stephen Hawking said that I can prove on the blackboard at least 11 different realities. And within each reality, there's many different timelines for whatever is there. Now, the thing is that when we are here, we are only experiencing one timeline in 3D. In 4D, we are only experiencing one timeline. In 5D, we are still experiencing only one timeline. But in 6 where pretty much everything is highly spiritual in the sixth dimensional existence, you have access to a myriad of timelines. All you have to do is to think of an incident or something in one of the other timelines where you may be. And then you bring the visual image and the experience of that into the presence, which could just as well be you going there. I don't know where the presence is, but you're able to experience what is in that timeline. So from the sixth up, I've seen some of that. So I know that up above sixth, I don't know. That's everything turned to light, and I don't really know what's going on there. There are people that say they do know, and we must listen to them because some of them come up with some very, very expressive details. From a spiritual point of view, could make sense because of the entities that they interact with at that level, angelic beings and so on. Yeah. And so just remember, you switch timeline by the way you think, what you do, what you visualize in your head, what you hear and accept to be true. Once you accept something, if you had a different impression of it before and now you accept it, you depends on how hard and how well you accept it, it could create a new timeline for you with different things from the other time, the first timeline. So I don't know. I've been just talking through, the hole in the top of my head here. So, but these things I am convinced are real because, first of all, I have had some experiences of higher dimensions as an astral traveler, or should I say, conscious traveler, consciousness traveler. And also what I see on the blackboard and the concept represented by the equations on the blackboard. So I'm going that route. And within this concept of higher dimensional existences, that's where we run into there are entities living at every level of existence. The higher dimensional existence, they have angelic beings, call them archangels or whatever you will. And there are thrones, there are cherubs, there are all kinds of different entities and energies and things. I say things because there are some things that is not human in form. They're just intelligences that has no form. And at those levels of existence, there is no misery, there is no negativity, there is only bliss. There are levels of existence below us in vibration. That's where you have negativity and lower vibrational existence beings. I know there are some people that have had near-death experiences and they have experience some of that. Not fun. But the thing is, if anybody ever find themselves in a place like that, you can think yourself out of it, because you can recite in your mind, I do not belong here, and maybe engage forgiveness and gratitude for being a spiritual being of a higher vibration. And some people say that they have been there, and they brought up a spiritual entity that they think very highly of, asks for them to come and get them and bring them out. So there is nothing permanent in a lower place like that. You can get out. So this was a tough one, try to figure out from the beginning, but I would say if you like any of what I talked about, please subscribe. And beyond that, until next time, be good to each other.